You're listening to Were You Still Talking? Okay, welcome to the podcast. Today my guest is Trena Lindsey, who I've known for about a million years. A million. She's been a nurse for over 20 years. She's currently working at Emerald Valley Assisted Living, where she's been for 4 years. And we're going to talk about all kinds of different subjects. Hopefully, we'll get into, can we build systems that tend towards the better nature of our species? But until we get there, you were saying you've never listened to a podcast?
I have listened just recently, but not to yours, I have to confess.
No, that's the important thing. That's good.
Yes. No, I didn't want to have any preconceived idea of how I should be here with you. So I just wanted to kind of be free and easy and ad lib and just not have too many expectations.
That's perfect. I like it better when people have no idea what they're in for.
Yeah.
That's the best.
They can just react naturally that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were starting to tell me something. Now I can't remember what it was. You don't like headphones. We've established that.
The headphones threw me for a little bit of a loop. It might be something to aspire to, but not quite yet. Definitely
nothing to aspire to. Remember that, kiddies. Headphones are unnecessary on an effing podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a person who doesn't even like fins and snorkels on my face or hats. Maybe it's a kind of a head thing.
Oh, that makes sense. I can't stand wearing hats. And with my particular hairstyle now, I've had to wear hats a little bit because it's getting way too long. But the only reason I like fins and snorkels is because then I can go in the water and look at fish through the snorkels. But,
that's right.
Yeah, they're really uncomfortable, but I forget about them pretty quickly when I'm in warm salt water looking at colorful fish.
Yeah, I should stick with it, but it just usually ends up getting discarded.
Yeah, it can happen. They're not comfortable at all.
Just kind of in the way. So.
Yeah. And that's why I don't understand people that swim in cold water, because then you have to wear a wetsuit.
There's that too.
Yeah, I never eat. Rather just swim in warm water. But I guess even if you dive in warm water, you have to wear a wetsuit because it gets cold deeper when you go deep enough for the big fish.
Yeah, which I also don't do that. I like to stay close to the surface.
I don't know. Yeah, I would love to dive. That's something I hope to do one day. Once people start sponsoring me, because I have over 20 listeners, then, I can do it. I can go anywhere.
Yeah, well, it's doable. My mom picked it up at age 70 and got certified and
awesome.
Made us all proud. So.
Oh, is that your telephone?
That is. I can make it be quiet. You know what that is? That's my work.
That's good. Oh, I'm going to shut this off too. That's a good reminder. Shut off my phone. I only had it in here to take a picture of our podcast.
Yeah. I think it'll behave now.
You sent me quite a list of subjects, which is totally awesome. It's really helpful.
A bunch of things just popped into my head about things that I felt like I could talk at length about or that are interesting to me. And I kind of said in my email to you, I have no idea if they're interesting to anybody else, but I find that it's pretty fascinating just to listen to people talk about most things. So I thought...
Well, they all seemed interesting to me. And if they're interesting to me, I'm sure they're interesting to everybody.
Well, that's promising.
Because it's my podcast, so they better be. So let's see. Let's start right off in the middle. Brain HQ, brain training. What is that?
Well, first of all, can I just preface this just a little bit?
A little.
Okay. I thought I could do a little bit on a lot of different things or a lot on several things over time. So I thought maybe it could be just kind of introductory right now. About each of these things, and could definitely go into each one more at length. So it sounds like for this first time here with you, maybe just a little blurb about each one of these topics. How about?
Sure.
Okay.
But I might stop you when one sounds interesting.
Okay. Whatever.
We want to, go ahead.
So, okay. Well, Brain HQ came from a doctor, a neuro psychologist or neuroscientist, Dr. Mercevich, I think is his last name. I don't have any of my props with me. Usually when I talk at length about anything, I have to have the book or something that reminds me of what the doctor's name actually is.
Sure.
But he spent his career on the idea that we have plastic brains that can actually create and maintain the neurons and connections that help us think, rather than, for a long time, the thinking was it was all just hardwired. And the book that he wrote is actually called Softwired. So he developed a whole program at first it was for special situations like people who had had brain trauma or autism or various types of, things that are wrong with their brain. But it was so successful, and he just felt like he wanted to get that out to the larger population, that it's good for anybody who wants to keep the brain in good shape. So he developed a program that is real, user-friendly, and it's online. It's subscription. I started doing it about 3 months ago.
Oh, cool.
And it's really fun, I think. It's about 20 minutes a day. And I try to think of it as my physical exercise, in that same group of things I commit to doing routinely. And it shows all kinds of measures of your progress. And it's got a bunch of different areas where it works on, and it's scientifically reliable. They tested results. So, and it's something just to continue to do for, as a person ages. And
well, it sounds really interesting. There seems to be a lot of groundbreaking research in the area of neurology and brains lately that are showing us that, maybe they work differently than we thought. And a lot of people are coming back from brain injuries that, not very long ago, they didn't think that was possible.
Exactly.
And more and more people are. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's really, in the book, there was a lot of anecdotal stories about various people he'd worked with, and just some of it was really miraculous almost, but most of us don't need miracles yet. So the idea is to stave it off, if you start working, just like exercise earlier in life helps prevent a lot of things. So does exercising your brain earlier.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And it's interesting because they're starting to find that all of these devices that we are so drawn to and that are being put down quite a bit for their addictiveness and different things, in actuality, they also work your brain in a very unique way. So they could be doing good things for the brain. It's just, maybe starting at 3 is not a good idea.
That's right. Yeah, I think that there are some pluses. One thing he points out is how important it is to unplug and be as natural as possible, like a natural human animal. For all those years that we evolved and our brain evolved to function was without any of this stuff, and how important it is to, say, when you go for a walk, not to be listening to a podcast, but to be listening to the wind.
What? Hey, wait a minute. Hold on. Back off. No, I totally agree with that, because I don't understand how these youngsters, actually I see people every age. I don't want to pick on anybody.
Right.
But I see a lot of people running, riding their bike. I've even seen driving with earbuds in.
Yep. And
it freaks me out, not only because, that person's deaf now, so they can't hear me coming in my quiet little Prius. And when I'm doing those activities, especially going for a walk in nature, even riding my bike, though, I really like to be able to just hear what's going on. Hear the birds singing, hear other bicycles coming up behind me, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely agree that when you're when you're trying to commune with nature, having stuff in your ears, it doesn't make sense to me. But a lot of people like seem to not be able to live without it, especially music. They have to jog to music. They have to work out to music. And I've always had the idea that if you're doing physical activity, your mind's not really there with music on, which is, it's just my opinion though, because some of the top athletes in the world play music all the time when they're working out. So.
It's very true. But if they want to protect that might be good for their bodies. But if it's for their brain, his theory is really that it needs to be taking as much of that into process as we did in natural state. So that makes a lot of sense. And that kind of it's probably really bow hunters probably get really good brain activity. Probably
when you're doing something like that, you're out in nature and you're concentrating, and it's
very natural.
It's
to
very
human
natural
evolution, too.
Right.
So
you're doing a human activity that we've been doing for tens of thousands of years. Yeah. Every year we find out it's even longer. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and he stressed too, walking on different surfaces, and even if you can get your shoes off. We didn't wear shoes till relatively recently as a development of a human animal. So all of that actually connects to how our brain is processing information. And the more we're kind of bubbled off from our environment, the less our brain is having to work at it.
And I've heard completely different theories for walking around on grass or something with no shoes on, that I can't remember what it is. You get like a magnetic resonance from the earth.
That's what I had heard first, and I thought it was kind of woo-woo.
Yeah, but that's pretty woo-woo.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that he connects it as a scientist.
Yes.
Which happens a lot.
For brain function. Yeah. So I bought it when I read it from him. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, I know it does feel good to walk around barefoot.
It feels good too. Yeah.
Unless you step on the stupid little spiky balls that fall from our tree. But,
those are out there.
Those are annoying. So you want to go back and start somewhere else in the middle?
Well, let's see. I know that we have a lot in common for several reasons. We have a particular person who is a friend of mine and a relative of yours, your sister Elizabeth, and that comes from our history of living together in the neighborhood of College Hill, very close across the street, as a matter of fact. So one of the topics I had on there that I'm interested in, because I still live on College Hill, is College Hill history.
That's right. You still live there.
I
College
do.
Hill
Well, I live there
history.
again.
You mean like the parties that you guys would have when all the grass got smashed down? And
that was some special history for I still think a relatively recent era.
I'm afraid it wasn't very recent. Oh, I see what you mean. But overall,
yes, I was imagining more about the origin of it being College Hill. I just coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, but the Friendly Area Neighborhood newsletter that comes out. I think this is Friendly Area Neighborhood here.
It seems to be a really big area from what I keep seeing.
I don't know if it's growing, but if it's...
I don't know if it's growing, or they just decide, let's include all these people over here. And, the weird thing about College Hill is that did you ever call it that when we were kids?
I don't remember to me, it's just always been College Hill. So I don't remember, actually.
Because I didn't know it was College Hill till I came back from L.A.
Really?
And people were like calling it College Hill, and this was the South Side and different things like that.
That's a really interesting question. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, Lincoln Street, I guess it was.
Well, we just called it Lincoln.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I didn't remember people calling it College Hill. It could be my memory, but I really don't remember. Somebody said College Hill, within the last 15 years or however long I've been back in Eugene, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You're what? Oh, where I live? Oh.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Well, and I do know that it did actually have a college up there at some point. I want to say maybe in the 1800s. That I think it burned.
Okay.
But what I
well,
saw,
that makes a lot more sense.
well, sure. I mean, there's a real reason why it's called College Hill.
Uh-huh.
So, and then just though in the friendly newsletter, I saw, they're talking about doing a mural on that part of the sidewalk that's across from where Civic was. That's kind of shores up some embankment, and it's just this blank kind of wall that's been ugly and unattractive for years. So somebody got the idea, let's paint a nice mural on there. So they raised funds, and it's going to happen. It's in the newsletter.
Oh, cool.
And it's going to be a picture of, there used to be a hospital up there, and that I did not know.
Wow.
But it was very interesting to read that, because when I worked at Cascade Manor, people would refer to College Hill as Pill Hill. And I thought it was because maybe a lot of doctors lived up there, because at the top of the hill, there are some very nice homes. But now I'm thinking maybe it's because of the history of having had a hospital.
Oh, because interesting.
Yes, I found that interesting. But I know,
because I would think should be called Reservoir Hill or something.
That's right.
That's what it
big
is
water
now.
tower hill.
Yeah, big water tower hill, Reservoir Hill.
Yep.
That's crazy.
So I don't know a lot about it. That's right. I was going to try to get my caveat in there too, that I'm not an expert on anything, and I don't claim to be an official either. So these are just things I'm kind of interested in and would like to know more about, and just to kind of chat about.
Well, that's okay. That's where we all are.
Well,
whether we want to think this or not, that's where we all are.
I don't know. Some people
I've been listening.
are a little more official than others.
Yeah, some people have more. Some people are a little more official than others. But if you think of what people will look at 50 years from now, we'll all be a bunch of dunces. We'll be like, what? What? We didn't know we could live forever. AI is going to do that?
It's moving pretty quickly toward that.
It's moving really fast. So all of us always have a lot to learn. But yeah, you know more than I do about nursing, I imagine. And probably a lot of other things.
Yeah. I know. Back to College Hill, there was a drive-in movie theater where Mark of Choice is now, and the Willard School. That all used to be a drive-in movie theater.
Oh my goodness, you know a lot of stuff. So how did you find out all this history? Is there a College Hill website or something?
No, I really think it's probably just having lived there for a huge, chunk of my life, just having my consciousness raised to it. So anytime I see something written about it or hear about it on the radio, it just kind of sort of sticks a little bit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I can't say I actually know something for sure. I have this vague feeling that might be the case.
Right.
So that's how a lot of my knowledge about College Hill is. I think I heard this. I know there used to be orchards up there too.
Well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. There was probably orchards a lot of places. And right next to your house, there was a really old house that was moved. Wasn't that moved from outside?
Well,
no.
The big Queen Anne historical register house, that was original to, maybe you know more than I do about it, but I always understood that it was built there, one of the earliest homes.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought it was moved at one point, but I'm sure I can have that wrong.
Well, it maybe because
it's been a rumor.
Well, it's like the oldest house. There's another really old one farther down Lincoln Street past Cornucopia that might be one of the oldest homes in Eugene. But then I think that what do we call it? The gingerbread house, or it had all that really ornate
I think we did call it the gingerbread house. Yeah. I always had this fantasy about moving back into the house where I grew up. And then I realized, that would be really expensive, and someone lives there, and what would I do with all those rooms?
Well, I don't know.
Besides clean them.
You could rent some out. It had those three levels.
Well, I think the people that ended up living there for a long time that Elizabeth kind of knew, I actually helped them chop down the cherry tree, which means I'm really honest, right? I helped them chop down that because it rotted and it was falling down. And I don't even remember how we connected, but they were renting out the basement where I learned to play drums for a long time. That was such a nice feature of that house. It's anyone listening to this podcast has no idea what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's okay.
It is. That's fine.
Some people might. Elizabeth does.
She'll know exactly. And if everyone else who I used to know would just listen to the podcast, then everyone would know what we're
Blast
talking
from
about.
the past references.
Exactly.
So. Yeah.
That's what it is. Favorite places. Let's go to that first. There's another subject on here that's might be a little heavier.
Sure.
Hawaii, Palm Springs, didn't you just go to Palm Springs?
I did just go to Palm Springs. It was my 8th trip down since 2013.
Oh, wow.
I read an article in Vanity Fair about places to travel, and this was an older article. This was like a reprint of an older Vanity Fair article about Palm Springs. And I had, everybody's heard of Palm Springs, but to me before that, it was just kind of some old golf place down in California. But the article really focused on how it was having a kind of a revival in the late 90s. And younger people were coming over from LA and buying this really nice mid-century modern architectural style homes for dirt cheap. And by the time this article was reprinted, it was already kind of too late to hit that window.
It was too late.
Yeah.
By the time I heard about the mid-century modern movement there and how people, I think Heidi knows some people that have a home there. And it seems like I've known some people that talked about their house there. And it's not really affordable anymore.
No,
I mean,
it went from buying a $150,000 ranch style to they're now $1 million.
Right, they're now LA prices.
They are.
At least.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're all been fixed up. So
Yeah, but anyway, it just sort of sparked something for me. I wanted to check it out. My mom had a timeshare down there that I was able to use to stay in, and just fell in love with everything about it. The desert climate was wonderful. It's sun. It's all the cliche things that why people gravitate there and why it even came into existence to start with is, warmth and dry heat and wonderful places to hike and wildlife and all the different outdoor sports you can think of, swimming and tennis and golf and it had that kind of reputation for being, I think they called it even Heaven's Waiting Room, because all the old
That's funny. I've never heard that one.
There are a lot of old people there for sure, but there's also now a lot of young people. And what's more is the old people who are there don't act old; they act young. They still do it all, and so it's been quite a pleasure to visit there. Pretty regularly for those years, and I've been down with my sons, and then twice I've gone with the girls. Oh, that's right. Who, again, include your sister and my sister, and are a friend of ours from high school, another one, Angela. So we're kind of the foursome who can have quite a bit of fun when we're together. So
I always missed Palm Springs because we would just head north and go to Joshua Tree.
Oh,
so, yeah. I mean, I think I've been once to Palm Springs, maybe twice. But it sounds like a really cool place to visit. And Joshua Tree, I fell in love with the first time I went there.
Oh, yeah. We drove through there one of the times. And we were going to try to get through there again this trip, but it just didn't work out time-wise. But I wanted to go through there for sure because it was closed for a while when the government was shut down.
Oh, that's right.
And I read this horrible story about vandalism that happened, just moved in as soon as there wasn't any monitoring there, and was just completely disgusted by that. And people actually cut down some of these Joshua trees.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is really bizarre. I guess they left a lot of garbage behind, which shows you how much work it takes to keep a national park as pristine as they are.
Right.
And cutting down Joshua trees makes no sense at all. There's Joshua trees all over the place that you can cut down. Right outside the park, you can go to a national forest and cut down Joshua trees all day long. So it was purely an act of some kind of bizarre vandalism against a national park.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is our land. Let's vandalize it.
I think merely because there's nobody here to stop us. And
which is another thing I found really curious, because in reality, there's only the notion that there's nobody here to stop us. I mean, if you've ever gone to most national parks, there's not that many people there. Rangers
pretty
are
sparse.
Really stretched thin. So it's pretty amazing just that the idea that there's rangers is enough to keep people in check, and that the idea that the rangers aren't there, it creates some kind of strange mayhem. It's really bizarre.
It is. It's like when the lights go out in New York or something, and all of a sudden there's just chaos because they know nobody's there to keep control. When
I wonder if it would still be that way, because I know they had blackouts. I think it was the 70s and 80s, and exactly it would turn into mayhem. I experienced several different disasters in California. I experienced a riot. I experienced earthquake, fires, and didn't happen that way. Like, the people in the riot obviously were rioting, but everyone else was banding together to help each other.
Oh, good.
Very quickly. Same with the earthquake. I mean, when you watch Earthquake, which is a really bad 70s movie, there's all of this, like, everyone's going crazy because there was an earthquake and there's no police to stop them. But the reality of it was the opposite. Everyone really came out and tried to help each other, immediately and for several days. And it was absolutely astounding how fast a city that big got things back up and running.
Oh, good. Well, that's what we all hope actually does happen, and probably usually is the response. And we do hear, the good news too, but so often it's the really crazy bad stuff that really gets the most headlined. And
that's definitely what gets the headline, because that sells headlines, unfortunately. That's why we don't do news on this show, because there's enough of that.
That's right.
There's enough of that going on. And I could, as I said on my last podcast, I could just be by myself and do, rail against the news and rant all day long. That's easy. Come on.
Some podcast shows are like that too. I hear. Your kids have shown me lots of little clips of
the shows that I was attracted to that encouraged me to do a podcast were trying not to be that way. So even though they did talk about news somewhat, they tried to steer away from hysteria and facts that are really guesses, which is, I guess we're doing a little of that, but nothing wrong with guessing. Nothing wrong with guessing. We're just telling stories. Stories.
Well, that's fine with me.
So something on your list here. You've been a nurse for a long time. You have parents, relatives with Alzheimer's, and losing parents.
Yes. That definitely is heavier than Palm Springs.
It is, and it's strangely related to Palm Springs.
Well, it is true, and it is something we share. I know, having had both our moms go through that, separated by maybe 10 years or so. I'm not sure how far ahead your mom was.
I was recently reminded, and of course I've forgotten already, but that sounds about right. About 10 years, and then.
And our moms were the same age, exact same age, too.
I didn't realize that. I guess I never made that connection.
They were.
Because you're my sister's friend.
That's right, and we're the same age, so.
How crazy. I didn't realize they were exactly the same age.
Yeah.
So your mom got 10 more years. Well, she did. Our mom actually had early Alzheimer's.
She did.
So that's a little bit different.
It is. And, everybody is so afraid of that condition. I mean, it's so pertinent to people our age because a lot of us have seen our parents go through it at this point, but it's also just we're in the tsunami
Right.
aging. We're at the tail end of baby boomers, I know. But
I mean, we see our moms go through it. We see our friends' moms go through it. You know, we see people's work acquaintances, their parents are going through it. There's just so much of it. Glenn Campbell went through it. I don't know how he performed, but that really was amazing.
It's famous people, completely regular people like us, political people. You can hardly not see somebody commenting on their parent or some loved one having gone through it. I, of course, working, my first job was in a kind of unit that was small, and it was pretty much a dementia unit. So I got right away in nursing introduced to what that was like, what people are like. And oddly enough, it kind of relaxed me a little bit about it, because I realized these people still are getting through life, experiencing a day, and most days aren't too bad. And they still had things that were funny and fun and family visits. And so I am less afraid of it now. And I think I'm kind of resigned to the idea that it's probably going to happen to me.
Oh, that's interesting, because my sister seems to think the same thing. And I don't know.
You're not?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it might, but I'm definitely not resigned to the fact that it will, because I'm going to do the brain training.
There you go.
So I'll be fine.
No sense not trying to avoid it along the way.
Yeah. And plus, I may die long before it is very advanced. So at least that's how I felt recently.
Oh.
So did it help was it helpful working in an Alzheimer's unit when your mom got Alzheimer's? Like, did that make a difference or not so much?
I think both helped and maybe hindered, because I always thought, if this happens to my parents, it'll be a snap to deal with it. And I'm a pro at this and I'll know just what to do. But I was not prepared for how much that didn't matter when it actually happened to my mom. And I just had all the emotions and all the frustrations and all the anger that any other child goes through when that happens to their parents. And so then that maybe even added a little bit of a layer to me feeling like, I should have this. This shouldn't bother me, but it is. So, but on the other hand, in many ways, I'm sure I knew what to expect. I knew what was kind of in the normal range for behaviors. I wasn't shocked when she got confused about who I was sometimes. So I know that's really upsetting to some people.
Right.
So negotiating through the doctors, that kind of thing, the medications she was on, all that was familiar and made sense. And I see a lot of families be really in denial and really just struggle and fight against it for a long time. I think I was more accepting of, this is happening. And
that it seems like that would be helpful. It's really tough to not have the same emotions as anyone else is going to have. It's the same with when people pass. Heidi's mom recently passed away, and she was...
I didn't know.
Oh, you didn't know that?
I didn't know.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
She was 99 and a half.
I knew she was.
You think, okay, she's 99 and a half. It's not that traumatic. We know this is going to happen, but it just doesn't change that much. And, I have all these theories about death and the possibility of life after death and what happens when you die. And for me, anyway, that all goes right out the window when you're actually seeing someone who's, okay, this is going to happen today. I don't want to hang around for it anyway. It's much more dramatic. Have you had much experience with that? And
yes, is the short answer. In a setting where I worked, the turnover is pretty you realize after a couple years, there aren't very many of the same people who still live there who did a couple years ago. So I've seen many, many, many people at that final stage, and it's never bothered me one little bit. I realized that it is how much it reminded me of sort of the birth, the other end of life, that those two happenings are bookends for all of us, and they're just as sacred and special and natural, and an honor to be present for, either one.
See, that's great. That's what the hospice people were saying, and that's what I believe. It's just that I think maybe it was because I was so young when my brother died, so I had an immediate aversion to that. I think that was kind of dug into me, so it's very hard. Well, but I'm really glad there's people like you who, are okay with it and understand that is, because it is part of life. You don't get one without the other. It's
That's right.
At least not so far.
And for my own mom's passing, which I always envisioned being something drawn out and would see it coming and be prepared for it, and would maybe be even 10 years later than it was. It was completely the opposite. It happened unforeseen. She'd been up at breakfast that morning and no warning sign at all, and literally just went to take her regular morning nap and did not wake up. And so what I was mostly struck by was that I was just completely shocked. Yes.
Yeah. And see, in a way, for me, that's easier. I mean, because that's happened to my dad. We got a call in the middle of the night. It's all done. It's over. And it was really hard with my mom. I mean, we knew for a long time, and even when she got close to the end, it was, it was obvious for a couple of weeks at least. And so that's very difficult. I
agree.
I mean, I hate to compare this to animals, but it's the same with animals. I mean, I've had so few animals that when I was younger, my animals would disappear or they would somehow die very quickly. And then more recently, I've had animals that did not do that, that I took care of. They were obviously going to die for a year or more. And it's much, much more difficult that way. At least for me.
Agree. I agree for a number of reasons. It just involves waiting for something that is going to happen, and seeing fair amount of suffering sometimes. Hospice definitely helps relieve that.
The hospice people are really great, and there's really not enough praise you can give those people, and people like yourself who take care of anyone really, but elderly as well. That's got the hospice. The fact that they're volunteers and they really do a lot. For Heidi, they didn't have to do as much because it did happen pretty quickly. But just even being there the last month she was on hospice, and of course, as soon as she got on hospice, she started doing better.
And that happens. We deal with hospice all the time, and they will point that out. Some people, because of the extra care and support that comes in, they kind of rally a little bit. So that maybe is what happened.
Well, I'm still thinking with drugs.
Yes, some special drugs come their way, the comfort pack.
Because, they changed things around, so she would feel more comfortable. And that, I think, definitely helped. So it was interesting, but the extra attention is huge, and not having to go, if something comes up medically, that she's not going to have to go anywhere. I think that was huge. Yeah,
just changing that. I always think of it as before hospice, you're kind of on one path where if anything goes wrong, everything happens to try to fix it. Like everybody's on that same path. We're going to fix this. The doctors are going to fix it. The hospital is there. But once that goal is changed to be about comfort, then it's just about kind of letting nature take its course and trying to address the downsides of passing, for not just for the person involved, but for all the family and the care team if they live in a facility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hospice is...
it helped them too. This particular facility, which I won't mention on air because they decided to start changing personnel every week and become a training hospital. And so the only people that were familiar, even to us, were the hospice people and a couple nurses. And that was very problematic, especially for her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was having a hard enough time. And then new faces every day, new faces who I have to say were not trained in the least.
Well,
it was pretty scary. But I can see how much help it would be for people who are working for a long time in a facility for when hospice starts helping and
it
taking
is
over.
A huge. I always picture like hospice is coming, and just picture like this team of they're just going to make the whole situation better, which they do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it has gotten very scary. I don't know if they're intentionally doing training.
Yep.
Or even if a lot of unintentional training is going on too, because in healthcare, the unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in 50 years or whatever.
Oh, right. And I realized that more recently that, they probably are having trouble getting people now.
It is.
But they sold and decided, this facility is the new company decided, we're going to make this our training facility.
Wow. I've never heard of any of them doing that. That's kind of a new thing.
Yeah, that's what some of the other personnel there told us anyway. So
yeah,
that was
hopefully you have opportunity for some feedback, maybe.
Perspective. We'll see.
Yeah.
What else was I going to ask you about?
Let's see.
There was something else you had on here. Oh, science of mind.
Oh, yes. Well, that...
Which kind of role, is part of this discussion.
Yes, I would call that more my spiritual health program. Long winding path with religion and spirituality, and grew up in a non-religious home with atheist parents, but always kind of felt like, I think there's something going on out there. And I, really young age, started to be drawn to churches and just the kind of, I loved a Bible, just the feel of the paper, and wasn't anything about really what I believed. It was more about the activity.
That's so interesting because the Bible is a really cool little texturally it's a cool big little huge book
on the edge.
Yeah, it's got like thin little pages that don't tear easily, and
leather cover,
all this cool stuff.
So
what was in it didn't appeal to me.
Nope, and I just kind of I went to church with some friends, and I have a cousin who was my sister's mom's daughter, and they were real strong Christians. So I kind of had a little window into all of it and didn't give it much due. But then when I got my degree in sociology at university, I took some just history of religion and kind of looked at religion from an academic standpoint and learned that it's human. All human populations have some form of religious behavior and believe in something. So I really believe it's fundamentally human. Component of us. Mm-hmm. And when I went to nursing school, we studied this model of human makeup, and spirituality is one slice of the pie there. So I just kind of acknowledged that at some point, over the years, and felt like I want to give that its due. So I tried this and that, and actually went to the Episcopal Church starting probably 7-8 years ago and got baptized.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And was glad I did that, but again, not super committed to the solid Christian, lore, I guess you'd say. Mm-hmm. Very much of an open mind. But in doing some looking around online at various churches, I ran across a link to the Center for Spiritual Living, which is it's kind of not right to call it a church, but it's the place where science of mind is the, I guess more like the philosophy. And so they have a magazine that's published monthly and sort of a growing worldwide following. And there's not a particular dogma to it. It's very much about just bringing together all of the helpful, I guess you'd say, parts of all the world religions, and with the idea that heaven is basically in our minds, and we experience it to the extent that we're aware of it. It's not like some place in the cloud in the sky after you die. It's accessible, and that there is a sort of God is the everything that the law of the universe, basically. And so it really just connected with what I actually do believe. So, but I don't go to that church. And I realized I don't think I'm a churchgoer, and it has to do with Sundays and working, 40 hours a week and not having ever had that be a habit with family, over my childhood. And so that's when I go on my walks up and over the top of College Hill and back is Sunday mornings. So that's what I do instead of sitting in a building.
Well, and that could be a spiritual practice also.
It sure feels that way to me.
We used to go to a church called Agape International Center of Truth.
Well, so Agape is part of this larger network that Science of Mind is in.
I thought so.
Yes.
And it sounded familiar. There's we went there to see the choir because they had this was when we lived in LA, and they have a world-renowned choir. And the musicians that play for the choir, and a lot of the choir members are like studio musicians and, ridiculously good. And they go around the world and sing. And it's that obviously same philosophy. The minister there sucked us right in. He's just a ball of energy. He did his study he did religious studies, but mainly about Christianity. But he always, when he does a sermon, he uses the Bible more like analogies. So he looks at it more like, it's talking about more broad strokes, and it's kind of hard to explain, but he's just all about positivity, and saying, I really like that idea that it's about the Christ within, is what Agape says. It's about the Christ within you, and God is all of it. Like God is everything, and you can connect to that, or the more you connect with it, the better you're going to feel, basically. And it can help. The people that I have a lot of problems with certain religions, especially in this day and age, but there are so many people that are helped by religion and prayer. So I know it can be a really good thing if you're using it as religion and prayer and spirituality. And it tends to. They're also finding that going to a church, I think it's more for the social activity, is one of those indicators of a longer life.
Absolutely.
If you're involved in something like that, which I'm not, but I can see how it would be.
Right. And I go through phases thinking that exact thing, knowing that it is good for you. It's probably the social aspect of it, but it's also, I think, you're just outside of your own self. It's about the idea of service and giving rather than, so much of the rest of our life or day is about, I've got to work to make money to pay my house payment. And so it is a lot. And again, getting to just the real fundamental aspects of what make us up as human. I think it's just as natural as needing to go for a walk or needing to sleep or, to find an outlet there that, or that kind of just innate feeling. But when it can be dovetailed in with some social, remedies and service, then it's just killing two birds with one stone there. It's good for you and good for somebody else.
It's really interesting because I can listen to, there's certain comedians that are professed atheists, and I can listen to the atheist point of view and kind of go, okay, I can kind of see that, especially if you're making it this funny. But
It's really funny.
it's now I lost my train of thought. But there's a book called *Sapiens*. Have you ever heard of *Sapiens*?
I possibly.
It's a big bestseller right now. It's written about the history of sapiens,
Okay.
Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
And it dispels a lot of beliefs, like, we come from sapiens, we don't actually come from apes. It's not quite that direct, and it talks about the literally the history of our animals, of the Homo sapiens, and how they got to where they are. But one of the theories it talks about, which he said, I mean, it's just his theory, but he says that when you get a group of people over 130, it seems to be about 130 people, they need legends. They need, at first it was just tales, basically, so that they could all have the same story, basically. So they need stories and
like
legends.
A cohesion kind of
yeah,
thing.
a cohesion, a way for everyone, because with 130 people or more, especially more, you're not going to know everyone anymore. So it's going to be harder to trust that person, even though he's part of your tribe. But if you all have the same legend, somehow that makes it, that works better. And that's basically where religion sprung from. Then religion became controlling at a certain point. Well, now, hey, we can control people this way. This is cool.
A lot of law was based
a lot of law is still based on religion, unfortunately, but something I'm very, very much against. But on the other hand, most laws are based on morality, which comes from religion originally, and so that's one of the ways we all live together.
Right. I was very negative about religion for a long time because of just, the horrible religious history of the Catholic Church and the, awful things that happened in the Inquisition and
slaves being buried in the churches in California, that kind of thing.
Well, that too, yes. So it took me a long time to realize that that's not all there is to it. There's also enormous good that comes out of it. And so I think the problem has more to do with politics, economics, control of one group over another, and that sort of uses something that's good for very bad purpose. So if you're familiar with agape, then I think that it's just the other side, the idea that it can be maybe the answer for us as a species and how to work together and get over our, innate physical, kind of instincts to fight each other and fight over scarce resources. I
think that's a very good point. That's actually partly why I started talking on air, is to kind of come to that point, to get to where to put more messages out there that there is a positive side to the human race, and that if you get away from watching the news all the time and go for a walk without your iPhone, then things will not be so intense. And if we don't do this, then global warming is going to kill us all, and we won't have to worry about it. But we definitely have to figure out a way to live together. And one of my favorite quotes, I think it was from Conversations with God, is that you're supposed to love your neighbor. You don't have to like him. Yeah. I always like that quote.
Yeah, it's a very simple way to say the key component of, Christianity, but a lot of other religions too, is that it might not be a natural feeling, but we have to do it anyway, to love each other, even when we hate each other.
Even right. And sometimes if you go into a situation with that mindset, you'll find out someone that you had ideas about is completely different if you go into it with more of a loving mindset. And, I think the way to get over our violent tendencies is more cane fighting, probably.
Cane fighting,
Cane fighting, yes.
It's therapeutic.
It is. We watch that for a reason. Or video games. There is some theories coming out more and more that these violent video games that everyone has been bashing since I was a kid, really, since they first came out, can actually be just the opposite and be an outlet for, especially male testosterone exists.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. It's not something you can just that you can just get over with woo-woo,
Sure.
Don't be so mad.
Yeah.
But I'm a guy.
Yep.
I was built to kill things.
There's a little bit of a physical,
that's what it came out.
Physical component to that.
There is. So there are elements to these horribly violent games that perhaps are another way to vent, another way to get out that insane testosterone. Now, I don't know why women play them, but
well,
they have testosterone too.
They do have it, but at a little lower levels.
Yeah, and they do. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that was where when they had the Coliseum with the animals and the killing, the horrible audience participation probably had a lot to do with that.
I think it did have it actually. We're pretty sure, at least a lot of scientists, that's not the word, sociologists are pretty certain that that was it was a way to control the crowds. It was a way. It served a purpose. It was once you stopped having wars and you stopped needing people to fight so much, because the Romans they owned a lot of the world, a huge amount of the world. So what are we going to do with all these people? They still have these tendencies. They still want to see this stuff. So that was it. And that's kind of what football is about. Football is our gladiator. I mean, I watch football all the time and think, what am I watching? Why do I watch this? And especially I love the game. And then when you go to a real game, especially a college game, and you see one of these kids get hurt, it's a whole different world. It's like, oh no, he's really hurt, and they don't cut away.
And you can hear it too when you can actually hear what it sounds like down there on the turf. It's pretty awful.
It's a big difference. The first time I went to a pro game, that was what was so shocking, is that every play, it's about twice as loud because they're almost twice as big. And just the sound of the helmets coming together every play it's shocking. You can't get that on TV, not even a little bit.
Nope, you got your layer there, a buffer.
Big buffer. But I digress. So, pets and living with animals. That's a nice segue to a wrap up.
Sure. We're getting well into it. Oh, but first let me ask you, I have a list of questions that I ask people. Okay.
But the thing is that if the interview is interesting, we never get to them. So I'll just ask one of them, and I'm asking a lot of people this, what length of podcast do you like? Do you think a 30-minute podcast is good, 90 minutes?
Well, I have to say that the podcasts I did recently listen to, and I think I did because I saw listed in the paper, some suggestions. Oh. And so I did listen on some walks, and my walks were about 45 minutes. And so a 45-minute podcast seemed to work well.
Okay.
I kind of tried to listen at home, but I found that if my activity that I was doing while listening ended before the podcast was over, I didn't want to just sit down and finish listening. So I think something more, like 45 minutes, an hour is good.
See, I'm more inclined to that. I think the 30-minute podcasts I've listened to were stories. Yeah. So they were 30-minute chapters, and that made sense. Because, you can start the next chapter. I listen to the most popular podcasts in the world a lot, mainly because it gives me inspiration, but also because a lot of the guests are just really they're interesting. Yeah. I wonder if that's why it's the most popular podcast in the world.
Which one is that?
Joe Rogan.
Okay.
See, I don't really want to recommend it because Joe Rogan is a comedian.
He's more famous than you?
Well, just because it's not for everyone.
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's very uncensored,
Okay.
which is good and bad. But he's a very testosterone type of guy. He is also, he tries to pretend that he's not smart, but he's very smart. And one of the smart things about him is he hired good people. So if they come up on something, if they're talking about the brain IQ, he has this great big monitor. I'm gesturing for those that are just listening, and because I'm not on video
I'm
yet.
looking at the
He has
monitor.
this massive monitor where he'll just bring it up. His assistant just brings up, here it is, doot, doot, doot. And it's a live video podcast so that you get to immediately get the facts. So if they're kind of going on about something and they know they're straying way off, they'll bring up the story. Okay, what did the story actually say? And that's kind of fun.
Well, yeah,
but
that's sort of like the props I was talking about. Where
it is. I thought of that immediately. That's what it is. It's a prop. He had, and I started on this because most of his podcasts are 2 hours. He had a podcast with Kevin Smith, the one that they said, anyone could do this. And that's... It was over 3 hours. Wow. And so I eventually listened to it, but it took me weeks. And,
that's a show.
That's a long time. So it's surprising that is the most popular. Mine will be the second most popular because it'll be 62 minutes.
Okay. Well, that's a goal to shoot for.
That's something to shoot for.
Yeah.
So
do we have time for pets?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it's another thing we share, I know. Long life of loving animals and living with pets. And although I don't know if your family grew up with dogs. I think maybe...
Not actually. I had a dog when I was really young. When we lived in North Bend, I think I was 3. I'm 3 at the oldest. And this dog came walking out of the woods, and it became my dog instantly. Yeah. And within a few months, I can't remember... It was not more than 6 months. It got hit by a bus.
Oh,
it was, and it kind of, it was terrible. And I don't think my mom liked dogs that much. So it was a cat family for a long time.
People and cat people.
There seems to be, unless you're my girlfriend and she's an animal people.
Yeah.
She now has a pet, scrub jay. I don't know if you know about that.
I don't know about that. I know that scrub jays can be fairly personable. So is this a wild one that just...
It's a wild scrub jay. Jays are the smartest birds, like in the bird kingdom.
Yeah.
Which includes crows and ravens and jays.
I knew crows were really...
Yeah, and I didn't realize that jays were related to crows until we had a pet scrub jay. So we looked it up. We put... I remember. Heidi got this gift of this big peanut thing to feed to feed squirrels and birds. So she put the thing out, and it sat there for 6 months, and then suddenly the jays got attracted to it. So they all came in and ate the peanuts in 2 days.
Yeah,
it was like this huge thing. And
the word got out.
2 days. Yeah, the word got out. Boom. And this one bird decided, well, I'm going to go back there and see if they'll just give me some more peanuts.
Yeah.
So we did have some left, and Heidi would just kind of put them out. And then she decided to go out and put the peanut right next to her, and it would run up and grab it, and so on and so forth. And now if you go to my, perhaps I'll put a link to my Instagram page or my Facebook page. You can see all kinds of videos of slow motion jay feeding.
Oh, how special that you're really good at on Facebook. When my short 2-year experience being a Facebook person, you were one of my favorite posters because you always had something cool up, but a lot of nature stuff too. So
that's nice to hear because I have so few FBFs. I just don't have a lot of people that I don't know on Facebook, and I feel guilty because I've been kind of adding people to Facebook to try and improve my podcast listeners. But it's I try and make it a fun place. It's very tempting to repost all the political stuff because I see so many political things.
One of the reasons
I gotta put this up. Yeah. But I don't really.
I exited largely because of political stuff. Yeah.
A lot of people exited. A lot of people said they were going to, and they're still there.
Between that and the identity theft or the loss of, I don't know how many hundred thousands of
Well, it was my third time.
Oh, okay. So you're a returnee.
When Facebook stole when Facebook actually, I don't think I was included because they never contacted me, but I had already had my identity stolen 3 times from Yahoo, from, 2 other really big organizations. And it was like, okay, by this time, it's a moot point.
And, maybe it's just time to buy the protection.
Well, you get it free, you see.
Yeah.
When Yahoo gets everything stolen, and I was supposed to get it free for 2 years, but they're still giving it to me. I don't know why.
Okay.
So, and the other terrible thing about identity theft protection is all it is a monitoring service. So it doesn't mean a thing. It means they're going to tell you if someone steals your ID, they're going to say, "Hey, someone stole your ID." Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
My credit card would have told me that as well.
Aren't there like levels where, of course you pay more and then they actually do something at the most
because they
level?
don't do anything. I mean, Yahoo's paying them. Yeah. It's not free. It's a service that would cost like $20 a month if I was paying for it. So I figured, well, if at that level it's useless, why would people pay more? Now, if you pay thousands of dollars, I've just heard about this because I've always dreamed of this, and it's really a great reason. It's probably the only reason to try and get famous is that there are now actual scrub services that will scrub you from the internet, but they're like $20,000 because they're going to go in and find all the incidences of you and get them off. Yeah. And I'm sure that that girl who became a queen in another country and she was on some TV show. Oh no, she's a princess now.
She's the princess, yes.
Yeah, she probably had that done.
Markle.
It's probably very difficult to find much about her anymore.
Yeah. If you have the money and a reason to get scrubbed away, then
I think it would. Yeah, I'm really on the fence with that because on one side I'm like, that would be really cool. I always think, I could do it. It would take me weeks, but it would kind of be fun to have someone scrub you from the internet. And then the other side of it is, does it really matter anymore? I mean,
probably
I just
not.
Don't know if it does. Yeah. I'm not sure. Because that information is out there now. For me, it's been out there 20 years. I've been around since I invented the internet. Me and Al Gore.
That's right.
Yeah,
I think I remember that.
You remember that, right? And we're stopping global warming right now. Okay. Oh, I do have a theory, though. Before I wrap it up, I want to let people know that if you're Caucasian Oregonian, I think you should go outside whenever it gets nice because that would be a huge benefit for global warming. As, the reflection of our skin.
I would do a good job at that, too.
We're all rather pale this time of year.
Maybe not this year, though, with our early summer.
But that's ending, which is a big relief. We're getting cool weather and rain back, so
I did hear.
Very relieved. As much as I love the heat, I know that was too early.
It was a little bit weird.
Even people were just walking around yelling about it on the streets. When we went to the grocery store the other day, some guy just I could tell he maybe wasn't totally stable when he was talking about how
there's that parallel between temperature and illegal behavior or abnormal behavior too. So maybe that's what was happening.
Oh, that's interesting. Because we sure noticed that there are a lot more interesting people on the street as soon as it gets warm in Oregon. It's like, oh my goodness, what? Wow. Well, I think, it's cold the rest of the year. So suddenly they're
undercover
able to come out. Yeah. It's wild. All right. So thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I just am so vicariously loving this idea that you're doing, and I'm proud that you have taken it on, but not terribly surprised because you have taken on a lot over your life that not everybody does. Flying, acting, drums, fixing cars.
Oh, I do try and do these crazy things. I would still be fixing cars if I could afford it. Now it's way more expensive than when I was a car guy, car buff. But yeah, thank you. It's I hope it goes. I hope I can keep doing it. It was a kind of a last gasp because I had this back pains and couldn't play drums, so I needed some kind of creative outlet. And so far, it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet so.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I really appreciate you being on. This has been Were You Still Talking? With Joel Albrecht and Trena Lindsey. And we hope we see you. I hope you hear from us soon. Be good to each other.
Thank you. Yes. You're here.